Hello and welcome to today's 48th webinar in the On the Move webinar series. How is productivity created? Find the answer in labor management software, brought to you by Honeywell Intelligrated. I'm Tracy Niehaus, Director of Marketing for Honeywell Intelligrated, and I'm your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. You may ask an online question at any time throughout today's presentation in the Q&A feature on your screen. Simply type your question into the text area and hit submit. Questions will be addressed at the conclusion of the presentation, with the exception of technical questions that can be asked and will be answered real time. Please note that we recommend that you be hardwired when attending today's webinar. A Wi-Fi connection may result in lag time in slides updating and graphics loading. Today's webinar will include polling questions. Please feel free to answer these questions when they appear and be sure to click submit so we can include your response, as we will be sharing the results real time during the live event. If you'd like to revisit key sections of today's webinar, it will be available on demand at sps.honeywell.com by clicking on the resources link under the automation support section a few days after the live event, and you'll also receive an email with a link to the recorded event. Now on to the presentation. How is productivity created? Find the answer in labor management software. Discussing today's topic will be Jason Franklin, Director of Product Management for Honeywell Intelligrated. Jason has more than 20 years of experience as a retail supply chain consulting professional with a focus on process and technology improvement. He earned a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Georgia Tech and has been featured in multiple material handling and logistics publications. And with that introduction, the webinar will now begin.
Thanks, Tracy. Man, I got to update that picture. Okay, hey, thanks for joining us today. Again, as Tracy mentioned in the intro, my name is Jason Franklin. Excited to talk to you today about labor management and how we create productivity using that tool. First off, we're going to start off with a polling question. So we're wondering, and I think I might have hit the button too quick, from the polling question, what percentage of your warehouse operating costs can be attributed to labor? Your first selection is 50% or more. Your second is between 35 and 49%. Then we're down to 20 to 34%, and then 0 to 19%. So if you guys would take a moment, think about what you guys are doing and how would you attribute that to the labor cost. So we'll give a little bit of a minute to let people submit and join in, and then we'll see what the answers end up being, and we'll talk a little bit about that outcome. Don't be shy. So we're getting some voice. I know it was tough to ask you guys to jump right into a poll as soon as you got in, so we appreciate you giving us a little insight into your labor costs. We got about half submitted. And now maybe we could check and see. I'm going to go ahead and we'll see if they pop up live. We're going to check and see what things. So it looks like most of you guys are saying 50% or more, with a close follow between 35 and 49%. So it looks like a lot of people understand that labor is a large cost. And now let's take another look at that, a little deeper look. So let's look at some of what the industry says. If we look at the industry, calculations show about 50%, different studies we've looked at show about 50% of your operating costs can be attributed to labor. So what I've seen and different customers we work with, this is in the ballpark. However, if we talk about sort of material handling warehouse costs, ones that want to move or are using material handling, that goes way up to about 70%. And this is more indicative of what we're seeing, and it might be closer to the new norm as we look at different factors that are now driving the cost of warehouse labor. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. So what's the actual reality of labor? What is impacting labor costs? What is impacting labor? First off, it's really wage increases. Over the last 3 years, I think wages from the Bureau of Labor Statistics have gone up about 11% across the board, and in different pockets, different areas, it's gone up more than that. And what are the reasons for that? Really, warehouses are busier. The sort of number one reason we're running into, speaking with customers, is warehouses are busier than ever before, because of COVID and how that shifted customer behavior. So now people are ordering a lot of traditional things online. So you're seeing like general merchandise retailers, they've grown in their e-commerce because people are ordering things more being inside. And then other industries that maybe people didn't see as an e-commerce opportunity, like grocery or pharma, are moving into that and having groceries delivered, having their medicine go. They're just doing whatever they can to cut down the trips outside of the house, right? So in response to that and other factors like our workforce is aging out a little bit, hiring and training, hiring, training, skilled laborers is more difficult because the warehouses are also more complex. You're using a lot of different technologies in them, maybe voice, maybe scanning, maybe some areas are moving into AR and things like that. That requires a level of understanding of warehouse processes that sometimes is difficult to find. Another impact that we're seeing is often there's sort of areas of distribution because of geography. So a lot of, because of land costs, centralized location to the country, things like that, there's generally multiple DCs in one area. So facilities are increasing ways to attract workers, but they're also competing in the same labor pool, which also complicates things. So basically they're all going after the same people with those same wage increases, and people are moving for bonuses and things like that, and we're seeing a lot of labor moving in between facilities in order to get that short-term benefit or whatever it is. So one of the things we'll talk about a little later is how LMS can define a more stable wage increase through their performance and other things that we're looking at. But let's back up and let's talk first about how do we offset those rising wages. So right now you guys can see there's sort of a cost and productivity graph where you spend more, you get more productivity generally. As you push out to different people, you pay more, you can get more productivity. Well, one thing that you could do is lower wages, but good luck in attracting and retaining workers. That's going to be really bad. Or what you could do with something like a labor management solution is increase productivity while remaining wage competitive. Now, how does that come out? What are the things that you can do with a labor management program to increase that productivity while also remaining wage competitive? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So if we look again at that sort of typical warehouse and we're talking about cost versus productivity, one of the things that the goal of a labor management system is to lower those costs while increasing productivity. So really, you're benefiting in two ways simultaneously. And as that productivity goes up, which we'll talk about the factors on how we can do that in just a minute. So as those productivity factors goes up, the gap between the cost and the throughput increases, right? This is benefit created through the LMS, and we can see that also impacted by savings that the tool drives on cost. So not only can you increase that productivity, that curve, get more out of what you've got, but I also can drive some savings through that. So now we're getting into true benefit where that LMS implementation is giving us benefits and savings while creating productivity. So now, before we move into what are the things that labor management does to drive that productivity and create those savings, let's jump into another short polling question. So polling question number 2. All my shift managers or floor leaders, depending on how you guys categorize them, they do a great job of training employees. Your first answer is yes, that's a fact. They do great all the time. We also can say some do it better than others, and also they can do it better, or maybe you don't know. So let's take a minute to see what we could do to do that. All right, so now, again, looking at how our shift managers and the tools that they use in order to train our employees, are we able to train very well, saying, yes, that's a fact. We feel like some maybe do it better than the others, meaning their personality type might drive some things. They could be better, or maybe just I don't know. All right, looks like we're getting most of, we got about 30%, so it looks like they could be better. And that's generally something that we see in that a lot of times it's dependent on the personality, what type of benefit you get out of a program. So it's really one of the things we like to talk about in the labor management tool is giving individuals tools that push out consistent results because they're aligned with the overall facility goals as well as our standard operating procedures. So as long as the activities that they're doing, they know how that impacts our overall output as a facility, aligning those things really drives benefits across multiple areas of your warehouse. So now let's get into how do we increase productivity with the tools. So the first way is through coaching. Now, coaching we see as the silver bullet to keeping your workforce healthy and engaged. It's really about defining individuals that need help, putting in the ability for us to help them, and also having some sort of program of feedback. Now, most of you guys are going to say, hey, Jason, we already do coaching, right? Now, I'm sure you're right, but do you guys know who was coached? When were they last coached? How many times? What was their performance pre-coaching versus post? All these factors make a difference. Understanding, so now you can have a full understanding of where this individual is and sort of that performance continuum. So now we can engage that person in the right way, we can give them the right support they're looking at, and we can make sure that the supervisors and managers have the right tools to focus their engagement, because they just can't talk to everyone every day. So let's look at some of the screens, a screen example from coaching to show this in action. So this is an example of a coaching dashboard. And I think you guys can see right now the wealth of information that it has, and it allows you to focus your engagement to the right people. So some of the things this coaching dashboard is showing is the individual's performance, the last time they were coached, so we understand has it been some time, have they never been coached? You can see some people with dashes there. Are they here for performance, for accuracy? How does that end up going against the overall operation performance or the facility average? How many people are eligible for coaching and how many have we done? And then also how many sessions are completed. So now I could flip this around and actually not worry about the associates themselves, but then I can also define the different, I can look by coach so I can understand, is this coach engaging in the right way up to my expectations? And then how does that impact their session performance, their overall people that they manage performance, how much time are they investing in that? All that is highlighted by this and this is just one example of the information that we capture around coaching that allows us to focus individual into the right area. So now we've talked about coaching a little bit. So another way to do that is incentivizing, really using the different levers that we have within to incent employees to perform their best, or actually to perform against the areas that we'd like them to be doing the activities that we feel like is important to the overall goals of the tool. So with an LMS, you can set goals for your employees to be rewarded once they reach certain milestones. And the important thing to understand is that's not only monetary, but it could be non-monetary. So maybe there's areas of support people that you want to get excited about enabling another role. We can incent them with maybe non-monetary, or you can also define a monetary thing. So effort is rewarded in a way so that they get monetary benefit from it. But the thing that we have to understand is generally those monetary bonuses are defined so that every 50 cents of benefit an individual gets, the company gets $1 benefit in throughput increases. So it's really a win-win situation because individuals are able to capture more, towards a living wage, and then it also allows the company to gather in that benefit by, again, aligning their productivity with the activities we want and then rewarding them in a way so that they can feel good about putting in that extra effort. So, and it's very configurable. So the sky's really the limit as far as finding what carrots, if you will, work to drive productivity, but the message stays the same. We want higher throughput and fewer errors. So it's really not about what you're pushing out because you're getting that benefit back no matter what. but it also defines a performance culture where we're working towards the fewest errors we can, the most productivity that we can in order to satisfy those tighter and tighter service level agreements that we're getting, because everyone expects next day air and things like that. So what this does is allows us to align all that and give benefit for those individuals that are putting in that more effort that we need. So let's check out a productivity screen example. So this is an example this is a scorecard from our LMS tool, and it brings together a lot of different information. So from this, I can see where Sarah is in the overall ranking of the element. I can see actual history. She was, down at number 1, and now she's dropped down to 6. I can see how effective she is, and she's kept that effectiveness the same for the last 2 weeks. Her performance, which has gone down, and her own standard persistence, which has been nice and consistent. So with this, I can understand it. Maybe I need to talk to Sarah to understand what's been the dip, because her general performance is higher than her current 2-week performance, and she hasn't had a lot of overtime, or she did work quite a bit. What this does is starts giving me an individual story of where this person has done well and what maybe challenges I need to speak with her with. And then the aggregation of this information lets me look at the operation, the department, maybe it's inbound, so I'm looking at receiving and put away together, all the way up to the entire facility. And then I can do network comparisons, facility against facility, so I can understand lots of different information about where should I be putting, if I've got new product, where should I put it? Are there places that I should be focusing my continuous improvement to allow us? Are there bottlenecks that I see from a throughput area that maybe I could, if I fix this one, it'll let everything flow better and I'll get more output out the back end? All that is uncovered with a labor management system. So now I'm going to pull into another poll. So polling question number 3. And remember, the thing about this is your answers are 100% anonymous. We only see the percentages. So select the one that makes sense. So meeting shipping deadlines is a constant battle. So your first response is, yes, I'm constantly looking at the clock and praying. 2 is, yes, some days are better than the others. 3 is, well, we meet most of our shipping deadlines. And 4 is, we never miss deadlines. So from your role, from your standpoint, from your visibility, what do you think fits best for your particular organization? Are you guys hitting those shipping deadlines, or is it something that, it changes each day, where sometimes we're hitting it and sometimes we're not, or maybe it's not an issue at all for you? So we'll give everyone a little bit of time. I'm thankful that hopefully you guys didn't hear too much. My family got home during this, working from home, so there was a little bit of background noise. I hope it didn't bother anyone. But we'll give you a little bit more time to go ahead and define, what are we looking for? All right, well, I'm going to jump into the actual thing. And it looks like we're almost half and half, a little bit more towards we meet most of our shipping deadlines and some days are better than others. So the things that we want to look at is how do we drive consistency using a labor management software, or how do we maybe use less people to continue our good rating of getting out and hitting most of our shipping deadlines? So when we're talking about increasing that productivity, we've talked about coaching and incenting individuals. Now let's talk about scheduling. How do we do this with an LMS? It's basically, there's a couple of ways. One, we know that DC's overscheduled by about 20%. And even then, sometimes the throughput's not what they need because of absenteeism, individual performances of that team. Maybe there's some people out and the B team is there, et cetera. Well, so what we need to do is 2 different things. One, define a plan. How many people should we need for this area based on how we've been performing in the past, for example. Monitoring that throughout the day, so then we can understand, are there excesses or deficits in areas that we could help hit our shipping agreements by moving individuals into that area, or maybe taking advantage of some cost-wise reductions by pulling people out, moving them to a new area, or maybe giving them some voluntary time off, things like that. And that's generally through what we'll call, oh, I forgot about this, and your schedule said the orders be on time. That was determined to be a lie. So a lot of times, again, as we saw in that poll question, some days are better than the others, and it just depends on what's happening that day. And we'd like to be able to give you guys some consistency and able to do that. So through that, let's look at our estimated work example. So this is a tool that comes with our labor management system that allows you to define plans. So this is looking at multiple plans that are happening for case picking, each picking, and pallet picking, different ways of picking. All of them were created for a plan, and now you can see it. It's a little fuzzy in here, but you can see down here where it determined what was the plan volume we wanted to complete in the plan. It gave us an estimate of planned staff. It's looking and seeing from transactions the actual staff, and based on their current performance, it's telling me if I have an excess or deficit that then I can take advantage of. So most of our plans are pretty good because we're right at, we're 5% over, 2% over, 1% over, and 3% down. So we're actually in a pretty good spot, and I can see that very quickly by jumping in here and understanding where we are against these different plans. And now, again, it gives me the information as a site leader to move people around, make sure that my labor is balanced across plans, so I'm using the right person or resource in the right area at the right time. The final thing I'll talk about is predicting. So every day we make predictions, the time it takes us to drive to the grocery, how long it takes to cook dinner, how many people will show for the shift. And these are pretty easy because they're relatively close to the present. How we're predicting things like how many employees will be working in your warehouse is harder the farther you get away from today. So as these unknowns become much, as the unknowns become much greater, so some of the things that we're doing is using the historical information that we collect in order to predict the future. So we have a tool called the Attrition Prediction Service that lets us look at behavioral changes, meaning maybe their breaks extend, their performance goes down, their absenteeism is up. There's different factors that look at, and it's different by each facility, but using those historical factors, we can predict the likelihood of an employee separating with very high accuracy, generally in the 90 to 95% range. So we're looking at this attrition example, and I'm looking at the shift level. I also have it at individuals. It was just a little overwhelming. So we also wanted to show you, I think it was just easier to absorb looking at this shift level. So what this is we're looking at what we predicted for the next 2 weeks, and the model predicted this, and then we waited 2 weeks and said, what was the actual proof? So you could see here that this tool allows us to understand very succinctly and actually really closely what were the different areas that we were going to lose people in. So now I can get ahead of that at the individual level, maybe offer some non-monetary incentives for those individuals that I want to keep. I can open recs for those ones that we know are going to leave. And then, like, if there was something different here, like maybe I predicted nothing in shift 5, if maybe actually I had 25% in shift 5, I know that that's an event that was unaccounted for and that I should go investigate. So this is much like having a crystal ball into your individual's needs, and it really shows you where should I put my effort, where should I focus my engagement in order to keep those people that are at risk for separation, which also, I have to go hire someone, train them, all those different costs involved with that. Maybe I can avoid that. All right, so now I believe that actually ends our quick foray into how's productivity created. And I hope I provided some things for you guys to think about and how a labor management solution could maybe help your existing workforce be better, I'll say. Better from a productivity standpoint, better from a predictability standpoint, better from a cost standpoint, better from an engagement standpoint. So I appreciate you guys coming today, and thank you very much. And again, really appreciate you guys showing up.
All right, thanks, Jason.
Some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. We will move into a question and answer session, and we do already have some questions that have rolled in, so I will go ahead and get started with those. First question is, for the coaching feature, can you set notifications or reminders for training sessions?
Yes. So one of the things that we track, not only if they've been coached the last time they've been coached, we also can set whether they're trained or certified in a specific area and how long that certification lasts. So when we talk about it, there's a couple different notifications. One, a person needs to be coached, and then also a notification that, hey, this person is coming up and is going to need to be trained in that area again because the training lapsed after a user selectable time.
Okay. I have a 60-person facility. Is that enough for an LMS?
Yes, it actually is. So generally, when you're looking at over 50 people, the payback for LMS is right at a year. And then as you grow in people, that reduces. So the more people you have, the more benefit you can capture, so that goes down. But generally, anytime you have over 50 direct labor resources, an LMS is going to provide you a payback in a year, and then benefit year after year after year after you run that program.
All right. Let's see, next question. Can I start with one warehouse and add more later?
Absolutely, and that's what we suggest, because there's a lot of learnings. You know, there's specifics in people's network, so maybe those two facilities are different, but there's general processes that happen at each level because they're pushed down from the corporate, right? So we're able to understand what those are, what kind of benefit can we drive, where should we focus our attention. Also integration, we learn a lot about integration on that first project. So now that second facility, when you're ready to pull them on, because it doesn't have to be at the same time, as I mentioned, it could be when you're ready. When we add that in, then we've got all those learnings from that first facility, and then we can do comparisons at every level, facility, department, operation, all the way of every level. So we can say, how's receiving doing in facility 1 versus facility 2? And if they're vastly different, what are the reasons why?
Okay. What type of IT infrastructure do I need?
So it just depends on it depends on your current sort of setup. If you've got, you know, as a corporate structure, if you guys have your own data center and you guys run your own servers and you have your own, you know, SQL, Oracle, whatever server cluster, it probably makes sense for us to install on-prem and take advantage of that. If you don't have all that, then we can handle that through our cloud version, where we're basically hosting and managing all the servers in the cloud, and you're accessing it through a web browser on your local site. So it really just depends on the sort of infrastructure that your current company has, or sort of the strategies that you guys are taking advantage of, because we're seeing more people go serverless and things like that. So if that's what your strategic direction is, we can help you keep in that strategic direction.
All right. Thank you, Jason. I think that's all the time we have for questions today. So thanks to all of our attendees for their participation. And if we were unable to answer your question during today's live event, we'll send you a response via email. And as a reminder, within a few days, you can access this presentation on demand at sps.honeywell.com by clicking on the resources link under the automation support section. And you'll also receive an email with a link to this presentation, as well as a link to our white paper, Do More with Less, How to Thrive in a Challenging Labor Market. You can also find related content in the content area of this live event, where we have a Why LMS for DC video and an LMS brochure, along with our latest edition of the On the Move publication. On behalf of Honeywell Intelligrated, thank you for attending today's On the Move webinar, and thanks, Jason, for a great presentation. We hope everyone can join us for our next webinar series in June. Registration information will be available on our website at sps.honeywell.com by clicking on the resources link under the automation support section soon. Thanks, and have a great afternoon.